Hi, hello, good day, the void. No, but hi, seriously though. Osrin here, and I just want to do that thing I said I was going to do, with regards to talking about talking about Star Wars even for a little bit. Um, because again, there's another idea that I'm not sure. If, I'm not. I'm gonna listen to the. I'm gonna listen to the recording of this. I want to make sure. I want to be sure those sounds were heard because that was very, very loud. There's some weird creaks in this place periodically, and well, it's nothing particularly unsettling. It's at the same time, it's like, can you not do that? Thank you. Anyway, ow, just kicked my desk. Anyway, but yeah, I wanted to talk about Star Wars a little bit more. I don't intend on really doing a lot. I do intend on doing that a lot. There are plenty of channels that kind of become almost all Star Wars all the time because of the Last Jedi solo debacle. Kind of funny thinking about how, since I made my Last Jedi videos, now Solo's been a complete debacle. But I don't want to do that sort of thing where I become all about this sort of controversy. But at the same time, I do want to talk about the Last Jedi a little bit more. I'm gonna not really camera. Do you mind camera? Don't know. Well, I know why it's losing focus. It's because of the window back there, and I don't have curtains yet, so curtains to cover that up. Otherwise, I'd be able to eliminate the void entirely. Because I have curtains, but the bar that holds them is not wide enough to actually ensure that the window is adequately covered. So I gotta go shopping for that one day. So yeah, just don't be surprised if that keeps readjusting throughout the entirety of the video. That's gonna get annoying, I bet. I may have to get creative in the editing process. Have video clips and maybe even create some graphics because of course what I'm here to do today, actually, as I explained, is I want to talk a little bit about something I would do differently in The Last Jedi. Now, of course, if I were doing the movie differently, I would probably do it completely differently. But there's a lot of the times I like to think of ideas of how I would do a movie differently without reworking it entirely. That's kind of what happens. That's kind of like what happened with the prequels for me, where I've come up with a couple of alternate ideas. I never really fleshed them out properly, but I gave my alternate ideas to how to do the prequel trilogy entirely differently, and how to do each of the individual prequel movies slightly differently, while keeping the same basic framework for the film. And I'm kind of like right now I'm in that sort of same basic framework mode with The Last Jedi, because it's like. Because the thing is that there's the potential for a good movie there. It's just that the way it's handled it's not handled very well. But how do you keep the same basic premise where the First Order is hunting the Resistance down, and the galaxy's in chaos because of the destruction of the New Republic Senate and the main fleet and everything, and how do you use that basic idea, but then turn it into a more workable, more reasonable, more understandable idea. And I think part of it gets down to actually understanding where the movie should have really gone, in my opinion anyway. And that is not because if you think about it, the movie is definitely tonally all over the place, right? With all sorts of awkward humor all over the movie and everything. But that's not the only thing that's inconsistent. What's also inconsistent is this movie thematically. Because as I explained in, I think, the second video, the movie tries to end on this big hope point. They're on the Millennium Falcon, or saying, that we're going to be the spark that will light the fire that will burn the First Order down. It's actually something Poe says in the base on Crait, but that's not the point. The point is that this is the general theme they're going for, but that's inconsistent entirely with everything we see throughout the rest of the movie. Because, of course, throughout the rest of the movie, what we see is the Resistance get burned down, basically. We don't see anything else besides it. We only see the Resistance get destroyed throughout the entire course of the movie. And it's only basically by happenstance that the Resistance manages to escape at all. with any personnel intact, because there's only a couple. Again, there's only a couple dozen people on the Millennium Falcon, and that's literally all the resources the Resistance has, and that does not match tonally with the ability, with the idea that there's going to be hope. Compare The Last Jedi to The Empire Strikes Back, and how, even though our heroes have been beaten, they're still there. They still have there's still a rebel fleet. There are still, the rebels still have the ability to fight back. The Resistance doesn't have that, though. I think you also look at, say, Revenge of the Sith, where the movie ends on a hope point, but it ends on a much more personal hope point. So it doesn't matter as much that you don't see like their ability to fight, don't see the ability to fight against this new empire and everything. What matters is the very personal aspect of hope. The fact that hope is literally just two children. But both movies. But the point is, the movies end on a dark note, but that little hopeful note at the end, works in both films. In The Last Jedi here, it doesn't work, though, because it's just completely antithetical to everything we see. If you're to do the movie almost entirely the same, you would actually have to... In fact, it would probably make sense more to get rid of the hope point entirely and leave that hanging question. Almost everything is ruined. Where do we go from here? And in fact, that would have made for probably would have made for a much better finale in that regard, because rather than being sort of thematically and tonally jarring, instead you have something where it's like, it makes the audience wonder what is going to happen next. And of course, leaving aside the fact, there's all sorts of other parts of the movie that people didn't like, that would have to be fixed, quote unquote. Aside, just that alone would have been a lot more enticing to see what the next movie would bring. Instead what we have is this. And that brings me up to the idea I had. Because, of course, the end of the movie, Luke Skywalker does this astral projection thing where he projects himself across the universe and tricks Kylo Ren into fighting him so that the Resistance has a little extra time to escape, apparently counting on Kylo to make an unforced error in, rather than having all of his forces attack the base aggressively, he's just going to chase him solo, which, pardon the pun, which, of course, actually is a reasonable thing to assume because that's how Kylo Ren operates. But the thing is, of course, the whole moment ends kind of on a bit of a flat note, because as cool as the whole idea is, the idea of Luke Skywalker projecting an image of himself across the galaxy, as cool as that idea is, it doesn't really work because, of course, he dies in the end. And it makes you come to the logical question of, well, why bother doing it that way at all? Why would he astrally project himself if he's just going to die anyway? Because wouldn't the point of doing that be to survive to fight again? Why not lift his X-Wing out of the ocean and fix it up, because probably Luke Skywalker's capable of doing that, and flying to Crait to try and save the Resistance personally. Even if he can't do that much, of course that could shift the entire battle inside the base, and you get to see Luke Skywalker be Luke Skywalker inside the base rather than out on the battlefield where those walkers are going to kill him anyway. But I digress, sorry. But yes, but what's the point, though, of Luke Skywalker using this powerful ability that, how's he able to do it if he's cut himself off from the Force and he just reconnected himself with it? And bear in mind, I know some people take issue with the idea of Luke cutting himself off from the Force, but given that one of my favorite Star Wars video games, Knights of the Old Republic 2, The Sith Lords, deals with an entire concept of a Jedi cutting her or himself off from the Force. Canonically, the Jedi Exile is female, so I'm going with her, and that's how I played my Exile. Funnily enough, I actually played a canon the first time. The Knights of the Republic 1, I played a male Revan, and Knights of the Republic 2, I played a female Jedi Exile, which are both canonical. But which is also doubly rare because, of course, I played a male character the first time through I played a game. But then again, this was about the same time I played Mass Effect, actually. So that actually was a really weird choice I made there. Because that was about the time that I started playing female characters almost exclusively in games, as opposed to kind of bouncing back and forth. But I digress again. But no, this Knights of the Old Republic 2, though, deals with the idea of a Jedi, albeit somewhat involuntarily, cutting herself off from the Force and then rediscovering her connection slowly over time. And the idea that Luke can do this extremely powerful ability suddenly and unexpectedly when he's done this whole cutting himself off from the Force thing seems kind of implausible. But my idea more tries to rectify this particular issue specifically, because the thing is that we want the movie to end with Luke Skywalker doing something really cool, and 2, we want it to end with that whole thematic element of hope still being true and still being a realistic thing to look at. I guess that's a weak way to say it, but we want there to be hope at the end of the movie. In the course of the original movie, there is none. So my idea kind of boils down to this. First of all, the movie kind of plays out the same. I think we got to, we would have to do something about the whole 18-hour chase thing, because 18-hour sublight chase thing, because again, that's a massive even logical hole. That's a huge plot hole. It makes no sense to have the long chase at sublight speeds. And when the First Order could easily just get around them using hyperspace. But we find a way to make it so that the Resistance gets to Crait. And they haven't lost most of their fleet. Their fleet's primarily intact after the ambush and everything. They still have those 3 ships. They have the Raddus, they have that frigate, they have that corvette. Admiral Akbar's still there because, screw Admiral Holdo. And they're in orbit above Crait. And Poe's there, and a handful of fighters are there, that A-Wing pilot Tally and a couple of the others, whoever. They're still there. They're characters we've gotten to know. That none of them have been flanderized or made stupid in any way. They're there, in orbit above Crait, but there's nothing they can do. They're at a very, they're at a long range from the Supremacy and its attendant fleet, and they're powerless to stop enemy forces from landing on the ground and attacking the Resistance base. And of course you could fudge around with all the details here. Of course, you can have more Resistance people, you can have less Resistance people, and so forth. I'm not trying to get into the specifics here. I just want to lay down a general framework. Part of the reason I bring that up is because I know I myself tend to like to think about the specific details, and I kind of saying this to remind myself, don't do that, Osserin. That's a stupid idea, because that's not your objective right now. Your objective is to just lay down the basic framework. They're powerless anyway to stop the fighting on the ground, right? They're powerless to stop the ground invasion, and they're just barely trying to keep their fleet intact because they need their fleet too. They may be at Crait, but if anyone's going to come to help them at all, because that's their only hope. Their hope is that someone will come to try and help them escape. Because they've gotten pinned in on this planet. And so that's what they're doing. And on the ground, you have Leia, and you have a whole bunch of other folks. You have Rey and Chewbacca, the Millennium Falcons there, providing air support down below because they need some air support somewhere. Rather than having the Millennium Falcon show up once and then fly away, doing nothing ever again to help with the main fight. And it's desperate. The situation is desperate. Things are going horribly wrong. Things are going horribly badly for absolutely everyone. And just when it seems like everything's going to be lost, and bear in mind, this is a moment of dramatic tension that you can pull the audience in with, like throughout the movie, it's like things really haven't been going well, and you're thinking it's Star Wars, something will go right eventually. And it seems like, and at the very last second, it seems like nothing is going to go right. It seems like nothing good is going to happen. It seems like everyone is doomed. Suddenly, you're switched to the bridge of the Supremacy, and an officer says that a single ship is dropping out of hyperspace behind the Supremacy and its fleet. And they say it's an X-Wing. And the shot changes, and it's Luke Skywalker. After all of Rey's prodding, and after him considering all the implications of everything he's doing, everything he's done, it's Luke Skywalker in his X-Wing. And R2-D2 is there because R2 decided, because it's R2-D2, and R2-D2 believes in Luke. And of course R2-D2 is gonna, when Rey and Chewbacca leave, R2-D2 stays behind because he believes in Luke and believes that Luke will make the right decision at the end of the day. And he does. And he lifts that X-Wing out of the ocean. He fixes it up with R2's help. And he flies. And of course it's an old X-Wing, but it still flies. And he flies to Crait. But of course it's a single X-Wing. What is a single X-Wing going to do? We're all hopeful now. We're all a little more hopeful now that we see Luke Skywalker there. But what is Luke Skywalker going to do on his own? And that's when it happens. Suddenly, on the Supremacy's bridge, they start detecting more hyperspace signatures. And more ships start dropping out of hyperspace. First, it's a handful of fighters, New Republic ships. It's New Republic fighters. And then it's a few light ships, some corvettes, a couple of frigates. And then some cruisers. Suddenly, dozens of ships start dropping out of hyperspace. Because what Luke Skywalker did before he went to Crait is that he decided that he was going to try to rally as many forces as he could. Because unlike in the original movie, the New Republic isn't just utterly destroyed by a single attack. There's still other forces out there, not just New Republic, but other sectors within the New Republic. So you're going to see Corellian ships, you're going to see Moncol ships, you're going to see ships we've never even seen before. You're going to see Allied ships in addition to main New Republic ships from like patrol fleets and the like. So you're going to see all of this. And dozens of ships drop out of hyperspace, and most of them are smaller ships. Of course you have a bunch of starfighters because, when you're patrolling the Outer Rim, that's actually what the majority of ships are probably going to be. It's probably going to be fighters and light ships. And they arrive at the Crait system. And before long, you have let's just say 100 capital ships, forming up for battle behind the Supremacy and its fleet. And Luke takes command. And suddenly, things really start looking up. And of course, we see this fleet, and we see this 60-kilometer wide Supremacy, and we're thinking, okay, these ships can't win, so what's the plan? And Luke gives a plan. That was actually unintentional. That was not meant as a dig. That was not meant as a dig at Admiral Holdo. But the shoe fits. But anyway, Luke gives the plan. Their plan is to help the Resistance escape, help Princess Leia escape, help Admiral Akbar escape, help these people who they're going to need, because, given the situation, they're going to need ow, that hurts. They're going to need everyone they can possibly get, strong, weak, every ship, every resource they can get to fight the First Order, which is clearly the superior force in this fight. And so Luke Skywalker starts leading this fleet into combat against the Supremacy. And of course, all they have to do is break through. But, of course, there's already a few Star Destroyers. A few of the Resurgent-class Star Destroyers have already moved into position to cut off New Republic reinforcements to the surface. And so it becomes a real fight. And by the way, this is not like a second, third act or anything. This is just a third act. There's no self-sacrifice or anything. There's no hyperspace ramming or anything. This is just the final fight. And it's a big fight. It's a spectacular fight, because I've said before that, you don't want to subsume good storytelling and character moments with action, it doesn't mean that you can't have really cool and really big action. You can still have that. You can still have a huge fight. Like, you can have a battle... there's nothing wrong with a battle of Coruscant style fight from Episode 3, as long as there's some sort of emotional attachment in that fight, as long as there's some sort of depth and complexity in that fight. As long as that is there, there's nothing wrong at all with having it. And that's what happens. And finally, after a big, as we get a bit of battle, we see, we switch between the ground, we switch between Admiral Akbar, we switch between Luke Skywalker and his fleet, and we see casualties on both sides, etc. Finally, Luke and a few transports, a few evacuation transports, some air support, they manage to break through and reach the surface of Crait. And they severely batter Kylo Ren's forces because Kylo's the one defending on the ground. He's fighting Rey. Rey has been beaten. She's not dead, but she has been beaten. And that's when Luke Skywalker comes in. And Luke comes in and he fights Kylo. And honestly, the movie, this sequence can go anywhere from here. Luke can die. Luke can live. You can take it, you can take it any way you want. This would be given that Princess Leia would have passed away, or Princess Leia, Carrie Fisher even would have passed away. Maybe this is a moment where Princess Leia can be gracefully moved out of the trilogy, fighting the good fight. Do something like that. But at the end of the day, Luke Skywalker's down on the ground. He's fighting in person. He's fighting Kylo Ren. And whether or not he lives or dies, at the end of the day, the Resistance escapes, and the Resistance joins up with with Luke Skywalker's fleet, and they make a getaway. But not before getting a few licks in on the First Order. They destroy a couple of Star Destroyers. They deal some damage to the Supremacy. Maybe nothing impressive, but you have a few fires here, a bunch of hull breaches here and there, stuff like that. Just showing that, even though the good guys have been utterly thrashed and they're clearly outmatched, they're still in the fight, and that's all you need. That's all. Yeah, that's frankly, I think that's frankly all I could ever ask for. Just some evidence that the good guys are actually still in the fight, rather than what we get. And that's honestly how I would change. And that's honestly how I would change things up. And then would end the movie, and all of our heroes and so forth, Poe, Finn, Rey, and whatnot. Now make a dedicated, concerted effort to try and now lead this suddenly substantial force. And they're not the only ones, of course. Admiral Akbar's still there, and maybe Luke Skywalker is there, and there's a chance, there's now hope. Not everything has been destroyed. It'll be a fight, it'll be a slog, but we have a chance to get there. We have a chance to still beat the First Order. And that's what I would do differently. It's, one might say that it's a bit, that's a bit of a fan fiction-y sort of idea, but there's nothing wrong with that. I'll tell you right now, one of my favorite moments in Star Wars in general comes from Rogue One, when the Rebel fleet arrives at Scarif, and the ships are just jumping in. They're not even jumping in, they're not jumping in an organized fashion. They're kind of jumping in really haphazardly and everything, and but that's a really neat moment. I really love that sort of moment. Where the cavalry arrives, as it were. And I would love to see that. I think that would have been. I think that's at least an idea, a way you could take the whole idea of a battle, of this great battle where everything seems like it's about to be lost, and you kind of turn it around, but make sure that you don't make it so that it looks like everything's turned around perfectly, because it hasn't. Everyone's kind of worn down and beaten, but they have hope, and that's what matters. All right. Anyway, so that's honestly that. That's just what I want to do. I've been mulling that since probably before I recorded the Last Jedi series. I definitely been mulling that over a bit before I recorded the Last Jedi series, but I really kind of started cementing the ideas while I was on hiatus. So it was nice to kind of get that out there finally. I hope I didn't get too rambly. I know I repeated myself a lot before I started that, but I am kind of glad that I kind of managed to get that idea out there. I mean, who knows what else you might do, but it's just a thought, and I don't think it's a bad thought. There are plenty of things you could do differently, of course, and I'm not saying my idea is the best idea. In fact, I think it's probably far from the best idea. It's just an idea. It's something it's something, a change from what Rian Johnson gave us. And that's frankly all, I think that's frankly all that a lot of fans just want, contrary to what certain segments of the population seem to think. That's most of what Star Wars, that's what most Star Wars fans want. What they want is good stories. They want good storytelling. They want good characters and so forth, and they want good Star Wars. That's the same thing that governed people's dissatisfaction with the prequels. The prequels didn't really feel like good Star Wars. And contrary to a lot of people kind of sort of looking more fondly back at the prequels, it doesn't really change the fact that the prequels still weren't all that good. Contrary to some of that nostalgic sort of thinking, the prequels weren't really that good still. They're still severely flawed movies. Even if seeing a legitimately bad Star Wars movie kind of makes people think differently. Look back at the prequels a little more fondly. But that's what people have been looking for this entire time. They just want good Star Wars more than anything. That's why people who watch the Clone Wars appreciate it so much, because it actually is good Star Wars. For all its ups and downs, it is good Star Wars. Even Rebels is good Star Wars. I don't understand why people say it's bad. I would always say that Rebels is kind of ranges from like mediocre to good, but it never really gets super bad and it never really gets really good. That's Rebels' biggest problem, is that it's just kind of mediocre. It's kind of mediocre to good all the way through. Whereas the Clone Wars, it's like this huge spread of when it's bad, it's really bad, and when it's good, it's really good. So, but that's what people want, and I'm hoping that Disney understands this and looks at Lucasfilm and makes the changes at Lucasfilm that'll be necessary to improving the situation of Star Wars. Because if it keeps going like this, where they keep producing movies that are bad or mediocre, then it's eventually going to result in Star Wars' complete destruction, and that'd be sad. So anyway, I want to thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed my idea. If you did, leave a comment down below. I want to hear some of your ideas too. If you think that some elements of my idea is flawed, by all means, go ahead and let me know. If you think you can improve upon my ideas, go ahead, let me know. If you have your own ideas, again, write it down below. Ideas that you would do to change The Last Jedi, or even if you want, you place The Last Jedi entirely and come up with your own idea for what episode 8 should have been. Be my guest. I'm actually really interested to hear that. I really want to know what you think. So anyway, thanks for watching, and I will catch you next time, as I'll probably go back to playing some sort of video games instead of talking endlessly with my face on the screen, which nobody wants. So anyway, until next time, everybody.